I love my father. He served in the Korean War, and he came back such a broken man that our house was a war zone almost. Yelling and fighting and hitting, and you grow up thinking you're nothing. I loved being around people, and I loved serving them and changing their day. My name is Roberta Fair. I've been living in this house for 4 years. Dishwasher, I was a hostess, and for many, many years I was a waitress. I don't even know how long I was there. I think I was there for about 6 months before I had the accident. And the horrible thing about that was I tried everybody. It was about probably 4 o'clock in the morning. And of course, how do you get a hold of somebody? So it took me a while to actually get to the phone because I hurt my back so bad. But couldn't get hold of anybody. So I was basically left there for about an hour before someone showed up. So tried to find a job, and I went on interview for a year and getting frustrated because I couldn't get hired. I'm thinking, what else can I do? Because, I couldn't go back to my previous job because I couldn't do it. Then I go and do this, and now I've got a huge student loan that I can't even pay off. What else was I going to do? So, when my husband and I finally split and he filed for divorce, I had no choice but to go on assistance. Steps just to go down into my backyard. And I have this huge backyard.
For Roberta and other people in similar situations, finding a good place to live that they can afford is tough. And the rental supplement helped. It helped a lot. For a lot of people, it was the difference between having a place to live and not having a place to live.
One of the arguments that the Sask Party government put forward about the cut to the rental housing supplement program was that there was a whole host of affordable housing out there, and they had the affordable housing to fill that need. But this doesn't resonate with the 14,000 people who are currently receiving the supplement because they have been fleeing domestic violence or they have a disability and they have not been able to access social housing. So there's barriers in place for their application to these social housing units. One of them is the fact that often rental references are required to get into social housing. So many of these people have previously been denied access to these very units that the government is talking about.
Hey, how's it going? How are you? I'm good.
Those people that are relying on social assistance, young families, students, people that are vulnerable, that have precarious employment, people whose income is not enough to be able to afford a good place to live. The government needs to provide subsidies and support to people.
I was getting the rental supplement, but then I had to move from the place I was in to another place, and I was approved for an incentive, so my rent ended up going to really low, and I phoned my rental supplement for my mandatory report, and they said because my rent was so cheap, I didn't qualify for it anymore. So then, I understood, but now I had to move, and my rent is, a lot more than it was, and I'm not able to go on the rental supplement anymore. And I have to move to a bigger house now on top of that, and it's going to be a lot more. And I can't go on rental supplement, so it's hard.
So I think there's a great fear for folks who are currently receiving the rental housing supplement that any change in their circumstances, like a move, could mean and might very well mean that they would be cut from the program. And we know that if you're trying to make sure that you keep a roof over the head of your children, this might mean that you decide not to move, even though you're in a dangerous place. Whatever the circumstances, the freedom to be able to move is something that most of us enjoy, but not people who are on the rental housing supplement program. They don't have that ability, so they might end up staying in unsafe housing or housing that is infested with bed bugs or cockroaches because they're afraid to move and lose this little extra money each month.
But if I didn't get it, it would be catastrophic. I would end up homeless again, and I've been homeless, so I know exactly what that's like. I was couch surfing for 2 years, but there was times when I had no place to go, and I didn't want to be a burden to my friends and my family, so I would sleep in the park. I would find a place that I could go.
What I think many of us thought was that we wouldn't see the level of homelessness that we do now. And people are homeless for lots of different reasons. But the way you end homelessness is by providing people a safe place that they can afford to live, a home.
But we need to make sure and push that it's in the forefront, and people need to be calling the MLA, emailing, sending letters to the Premier and say, look, this is important. I don't understand why you're cutting people off this program, especially when they need it, whether they have a disability or they have children.